for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee-Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a quick check on today's highlights. The deficit for Korea's transport sector records the largest amount since 2006 amid falling Korean exports and shipping fees. We may soon see more Korean soju in Southeast Asian countries as Korea's biggest liquor company announces plans to expand its presence in Vietnam. These stories and more coming right up. The biggest deficit on record for Korea's transport sector as outgoing payments for the transport of people and goods outpaced incoming payments by over $1 billion. Here's our Oh Jung-hee with more.
Korea's transport sector posted a deficit of over $1 billion in the first 7 months of the year due to sluggish global demand and falling exports. Bank of Korea data released on Monday shows the sector's income from January to the end of July was $15 billion, while outgoings were over $16 billion. This marks the first time the sector has posted a deficit in a half-year period since related records were first compiled in 2006. By subsector, the country's shipping industry saw the largest deficit of $894 million, with its cargo transport income tumbling over 28% compared to the same period last year. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, Korea's exports for the first 10 days of September declined 3.6%. In August, Korea's exports rebounded after falling for 19 straight months. The disappointing September figures come as cargo volumes and fares decreased as sluggish economic growth in China, Europe, and Japan eroded overseas demand. Experts say the deficit and sluggish exports may continue for a while, considering Korea's biggest shipping firm, HiteJinro Shipping, is in dire financial straits after filing for court receivership 2 weeks ago. Oh Jung-hee, Business Daily.
And speaking of HiteJinro Shipping and some relief for importers, one of the container's giant ships, the HiteJinro Greece, has completed unloading at California's Long Beach port. Last week, a U.S. bankruptcy court had handed the heavily indebted company legal protection. 4 other cargo ships are on standby at Long Beach, which hold a lot of Samsung Electronics products. Korea's Oceans and Fisheries Ministry says 56 other ships belonging to HiteJinro are still facing operational disruptions, including 45 that are standing by in the high seas. Reports say HiteJinro Shipping has sent $18 million to the U.S. to unload 30,000 containers carried by its 5 ships at Long Beach, but it's still $153 million short in port costs. HiteJinro Group Chairman Cho Yang-ho is set to release some $36 million from his own wealth tomorrow. Korea's former Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok has been appointed to the International Advisory Panel of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB. According to Korea's Finance Ministry on Monday, the panel consists of about 10 experts in international finance. The panel advises the China-led International Development Bank on major issues. And the bank also appointed as its controller Yoo Jae-hoon, the CEO of Korea Securities Depository. He'll be in charge of setting up budget strategies and drawing up financial reports. And to tell us more about last week and this week's stock market action, we have our Business Daily's markets contributor, Jin-seok, joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me, June.
All right, let's get started by looking at the Korean stock market. Tell us how things went last week.
On Friday, the Kospi market slid by 1.25% to close at 2037.87, while the Kosdaq fell slightly by 0.3% as well. There were a number of negative factors that dragged down the Kospi index. First, the European Central Bank, or the ECB, unexpectedly maintained its monetary policy, while North Korea's 5th nuclear test contributed to weaker investment sentiment as well. Lastly, the world group of the annual S&P Dow Jones Sustainability Indices left Samsung Electronics out of its 2016 list, causing a 3.9% decline in the company's share prices. The Kospi market fluctuated throughout last week At the start of the week, lower expectations of an interest rate hike in the U.S. and strong performance by blue chip stocks, including Samsung, lifted the index past 2070, the highest this year. But the index fell by 0.05% on a weekly basis due to a correction on Friday.
Then how did the Korean stock market close on the first day of this week?
The Korean equity market continued to struggle on the first session of the week. The Kospi sank by 2.2% to close at 1991.48. It was the first time the Kospi fell 2,000 since August 4. The Kosdaq also fell sharply, closing at 652. 1.8% down from the previous session. Weak performances in global stock markets forced foreign investors on the Korean market to unload their shares as well. Foreigners dumped more than 200 billion Korean won on $180 million worth of shares on a single day. The selling spree was concentrated in the market's IT sector. Share prices of Samsung Electronics plummeted by about 7%. As Japanese aviation authorities on Friday followed their U.S. counterparts by urging passengers not to turn on or charge Galaxy Note 7 smartphones. Component suppliers took a hit as well, with share prices of Samsung SDI were down 5.8% compared to the previous session. The country's financial sector performed relatively better due to increasing expectations of a rate hike in the U.S.
Now, what are the market events lined up for this week?
Ahead of the September Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, scheduled for September 20 and 21 local time, investors are keen to get more hints on future rate hikes from key Federal Reserve officials this week. Before the blackout period, which begins on Tuesday of the week ahead of the FOMC meeting and ends on Thursday following the meeting, Fed Governor Lael Brainard, Atlanta President Dennis Lockhart, and Minneapolis President Neil Kashikari are scheduled to deliver speeches on Monday. Because a number of Fed officials came out recently and made a case for a rate hike, investors are still concerned that any signals of an imminent rate hike may hurt market sentiment.
The results we see from overseas market events are directly linked to foreign investor sentiment here in the Korean equity markets. So what are the expectations regarding the investment position among foreigners?
Right. Experts are worried that foreign investors in the Korean market might become more prudent due to external headwinds. The ECB meeting results and North Korea's nuclear test clearly dampened the sentiment, forcing foreigners to end their stock buying on Friday for the first time in 6 sessions. Still, foreigners bought 700 billion Korean won worth of shares last week, but experts expect their risk appetite will decrease somewhat this week. The rising value of the Korean won can be another factor making foreigners more reluctant to buy shares in the market. This has been Trading Up for Business Daily.
New data shows that Korea's exports of information and communications related products are still falling. But the good news is that those exports might be headed for a recovery. According to the Trade Ministry, ICT exports in August fell 2.1% from a year earlier to a total of $14 billion. But that's a smaller decline than in July, when they dropped nearly 7%. The improvement was attributed to a 2.5% rise in shipments of semiconductors and a smaller decrease in exports of displays. Meanwhile, imports of ICT products also fell a fraction of a percent to a total of $7.5 billion, contributing to an overall surplus of 6.6. Consumers around the world are increasingly turning to their smartphones when it comes to shopping. According to software technology company Demandware, roughly 47% of all traffic to e-commerce sites worldwide came from smartphones in the second quarter, higher than the 44% from computers and 9% from tablets. The results are from analysis of 800 e-commerce sites used by roughly 400 million shoppers in 40 regions around the world. Meanwhile, market research firm eMarketer says the global e-commerce market is projected to grow about 20% every year to reach nearly $2 trillion this year and $4 trillion by 2020. It's common knowledge that you need to establish a good savings plan early on to be well prepared for post-retirement. But exactly how much do you need to lead a good life, and how do you reach that goal? Our Arirang gives us a few tips.
Youth unemployment, an economic slowdown, and soaring living expenses. These are just some of the reasons why saving for post-retirement may seem to be a tough challenge. But with large numbers of baby boomers leaving the workforce, knowing how to budget for retirement has become vital. As a general rule of thumb, experts say saving up roughly 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement gross income should do the trick. But there's also another way to go about it, according to Forbes. First, have a general estimate in terms of longevity. Statistics Korea says Korean men aged 65 today have a life expectancy of up to 83.3, while that of women is longer at 87.8. Then create a specific budget plan that looks at all the current and expected monthly expenses after retirement. The key here is to budget a bit more for the first 2 years of retirement, as people typically spend more on leisure activities during the initial years. When it comes to collecting Social Security, Forbes says it's better to delay the start date to ensure a larger benefit in later years. One way to postpone it is by pursuing an entrepreneurial activity before retirement. When it comes to spending, financial advisors recommend the 4% rule, taking out only 4% from your savings each year. But with low interest rates offering less annual return on deposits, they say other factors like investment volatility and total resources need to be considered before determining how much to spend down the line. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
At the end of last year, Southeast Asian nations launched the ASEAN Economic Community, collectively creating the world's 6th largest economy. And Korea's liquor giant is eyeing the bloc for growth, with Vietnam as its gateway. Our Eunice Kim takes us there.
A nightlife hotspot in Hanoi, Vietnam. While locals enjoy a live performance, behind the bar, a mixologist shakes up a cocktail. The distilled spirit in the drink is none other than Korea's soju that harmonizes well with Korean foods enjoyed by a group out on the town. Pork belly barbecue or samgyeopsal also on the menu, a sight not far out anymore in Hanoi.
I'm trying what I see in Korean dramas and it's really good.
Korean popular culture is entrenched in Vietnam. For consumers used to stronger 30-degree alcohol, HiteJinro's weaker, smoother offerings are a welcome sight, even if it comes at a higher price point.
With Vietnamese drinks, I have to deal with the hangover the next day. It's nice that I don't have to with Korean soju.
In fact, the world's top producer of soju opened an office in Vietnam earlier this year, which HiteJinro says will serve as a gateway to the Southeast Asian market at large. Soju exports to the region have been climbing in recent years, with sales reaching $4.8 million in the first 7 months of this year. The 600 million-strong economic bloc gained more prominence with the launch of the ASEAN Economic Community late last year, collectively becoming the world's 6th largest economy. It's the reason Korea's largest liquor company is eyeing the region to help achieve its $475 million overseas sales target by 2024, its 100th year anniversary. It's hosting pop-up events, worked on a drama tie-in, and partnered with local Korean eateries.
Hallyu is very strong in Vietnam, where there's a high preference for Korean products. We've seen at least a 25% sales increase every year, so it's a great gateway.
Further, growth in the Philippines and Thailand have also reached double digits, according to the company. As Korea's alcohol presence and popularity grows, production could be brought over to Southeast Asia in the drive to globalize Korean spirits. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.